Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Understanding Your Enneagram course. And the purpose of this is to get you to be able to interpret, understand, and apply your Enneagram. Now, you're probably going to hear me say this a bunch of times during this course, but the Enneagram, picture it as like a pool, okay? And this course, we're going to take off our socks and shoes and put our feet in. You say, well, that's it? It's like, yeah, that's it. There's levels to this, okay? There's levels. But the point of this course is to get you to the point to where you know how to interpret, understand, and apply your Enneagram, okay? So I've been doing Enneagram for over a decade, 12 years, I think, to be exact, maybe a little bit more. I've done thousands of Enneagrams. I stopped counting. Thousands of Enneagram. I mean, I've done them for individuals. I've done them for premarital. I've done them for married couples, divorced people. I've done it for all different types of entrepreneurs and all different types of businesses, people starting businesses, failing businesses, restarting businesses. I've done it for medical practices, the whole staff, nonprofits. I mean, I've done them for everybody. Old, young, black, white, Asian, rich, poor. I've done thousands of these. I've got a lot of experience with the Enneagram, right? A lot of experience. And here's what I know about this tool. This is a self-awareness profile. You will not hear me refer to it as a test because test has performance-based ideology. And you don't want to be performing when you take the Enneagram. Because when you perform, there is a great temptation for your false self to come out. When you perform, there's a great temptation to want to be something, to have to be something, to need to be someone. We don't want, we don't want that person. We want the real you. So we call this a profile. Now, before we get started, there's a few other things I want to talk about. I love the Enneagram because it's the most holistic tool that I know of when it comes to self-awareness tools that I know of. And I know a lot of tools. I know a lot of them. I like it the best. And for me personally, it comports more consistently with my worldview. A lot of you know that I actually believe in God. I believe we're created. I believe all that stuff. So for me, it most comports with that, which is one of the reasons why I love it. But I love that it's holistic and it addresses us as a whole being, right? Our minds, our hearts, our instincts, our stressors, the things we do in security, the triads, all those types of things. And we're going to cover all that today. And you're going to be blown away. You're just going to be blown away. So I want you to think about something. And it's this. A lot of people, when they get into self-awareness, they're looking for a diagnosis. They're looking for a label, right? Because labels are huge today. We all want to know who we are and what we are. So that what? If you're looking for who you are and what you are so that you can find a script, that's not the right pathway to go down to. This is a self-awareness profile. The goal is to make you more aware of who you are. And more importantly, what you're like when you're in relationship with both people and things, right? Because you can't change until you become aware of the need to, right? So the Enneagram is a self-awareness tool. Every single person on the planet has a proverbial toolbox, right? Some people ain't got a lot of tools in there. Some people got more tools in there that they know, but they don't even know there's tools in there and they don't know how to use them, right? So this is a tool that you have to purchase and you have to learn how to use. But it is a powerful, powerful tool. But it is a tool. It is not God. It is not the Quran. It is not the Torah. It is not the Bible. It's a tool. You wouldn't, if you came in my house and you saw me worshiping wrenches and hammers and all those things, you would think I was crazy, right? So I don't worship the Enneagram. It's a tool. It's like an MRI or a CAT scan or an X-ray or a blood test for me, right? I don't worship them, but I see that they can, when used correctly, provide information for me so that I can use it to be healthier. And that's what this is about. Holistically addressing every part of us so that we can love well and live well. All right? So that's what this is all about. So this is how you know you're beginning to understand your Enneagram. This is how you know you can interpret your Enneagram, you're understanding it, and you know how to apply it. This is how you're going to know. So number one thing, number one way you know, you start asking questions you never asked yourself. You go, well, what? Yes, because think with me. Questions are revelatory by nature, right? They're revelatory by nature. So when you start asking questions like, why did I do that? And I wonder why I'm prone to be this way in those situations. The Enneagram literally drops the mic and walks out the room and says, I'm finished. Because what I've done is I've shown you and taught you how to be self-aware. I've taught you the paradigm. Now you're asking the right questions. Now you're seeing things the way you should see them. It's a tool, right? It's a tool. So, a few other comments before we jump in. Okay, there are a couple versions of the Enneagram. There's a free version, which scoring is a lot different than the way we're going to look at it. So if you're going to interpret and understand your Enneagram the way I teach it and many teach it, you have to use WEPS, right? WEPPS, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this on, I'm going to put it up here for you, and I'm actually going to show you this. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to be sharing my screen a lot so that you can see some of this stuff, right? So that we can dial in here, all right? So you guys see this, right? Yeah, you see that. That's right. You see that. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to go here to WEPS, and you want to go Purchase WEPS. And you click on this tab, and you'll scroll down here, right? And you will be able to buy the Enneagram right here. All right, and it's going to cost you $15, right? It's going to cost you $15. It'll be the best $15 that you've ever spent, right? In terms of an investment, right? The person who's smart, they invest in themselves. $15, okay? $15 in this course, and you're going to have a tool in your toolbox for the rest of your life that's going to change your life, and not just your life, but the lives of other people, because you're going to be able to pass on what you've learned to your spouse, your partner, your kids, your friends, your family. It's amazing. You're going to be able to do this. All right. Now, $15, you purchase this, and when you go in, it'll ask you where you want the results sent. Now, the Enneagram profile itself, you're going to say, well, how long is it going to take me? It depends what type of person you are, right? Some people it's taken them 2 hours. Some people it takes them 30 minutes. Some people, one person took 15 minutes. I gave it to my son one time. I think he has a record. He did like 14 minutes, right? He was just going through it, right? And that'll tell you a lot. How you take this profile is going to tell you a lot about who you are and what matters to you, right? So even that is revelatory. But once you get the results, right, once you purchase this and you get the results, then this course is going to allow you to be able to interpret, understand, and apply your Enneagram, all right? And as usual, if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to me, okay? And we can get going. Okay, so with that said, what we're going to do is we're going to move forward, and we're going to jump into an actual Enneagram overview, and I'm going to show you, share another screen with you, and we're going to walk through something called the Enneagram overview, all right? Now, I've tried to simplify this as much as possible. There are times when I've taught people actually how to do what I do. So I have a course where I teach people how to interpret, understand, and apply Enneagrams for others. In other words, you become like an Enneagram administrator. You become someone who gets good at seeing a profile, being able to interpret it, understand it, and help another person interpret it, understand, and apply their Enneagram. And that course is 2 days long. So I've tried to reduce this to a little bit of an hour or so, all right? So what I did is I just said, here's 7 things you need to know about your Enneagram, all right? 7 things you need to know about your Enneagram if you're going to interpret it, understand it, right, and be able to apply it. Okay, the first thing, everything is relational. What do I mean by that? Everything's relational. That means everything has a relationship with everything, okay? So I'm a big space geek. I love that science. I love planets and suns and all that information. And I mean, if I could, I'd probably go to Mars with Elon. Like I'm that guy. But here's what we learn about space. Space is a relational place. Everything has a relationship. We have a relationship in our planet with the sun with the moon. I mean, everything's relational. Every single thing is relational. I call it the preeminence of the relational paradigm. You say, what the heck does that mean? It simply means there's no place your eyes will ever look where you do not see relationships. What does that mean? It means relationships are the foundations of our existence. We are in relationship to people and things, right? Simply put. And everything else is in relationship to people and things. You say, well, why is that important? Because the Enneagram is a self-awareness tool designed to show you who you are in reference to your relationship to people and things. It's not just, oh, I got my number, and that means I'm good for this job or that job. It's way bigger than that because everything is relational, right? What does it matter that you have a number and you know your type and you know that these numbers like green and those numbers like black? Like, that's so superficial and label-ish, right? It's like a label-ish religion, right? You need to understand everything's relational. And all of your challenges are relational in nature. So what you need is a tool that will help you become more aware so that you might be able to do relationships better, right? So everything's relational. Number 2, the Enneagram is a relational tool designed to help you understand how you do relationships. That's what we just said, right? How you do relationships. So at some point during this whole time, as you're going through your Enneagram and you're beginning to understand the Enneagram, you're going to have a lot of insights. Oh, that's probably why I do that. Oh, that's probably why I respond that way. Oh, that's probably why I built my life this way or that way. Right. It's a relational tool designed to help you to understand how you do relationships with everything. I've done Enneagrams for golf teams, for sports teams. You say, well, what the heck? The Enneagram in golf? Yes, because it's a relational tool. People need to be self-aware so that when they go on the golf course, they're aware of how they're going to approach things. They're aware of how they might approach a 100-yard shot or fade or whatever type of shot, whatever relationship they have with these things, and makes people more aware. All right, number 3, we do all of our relationships through our personality. You say, yeah, duh. But here's the key. What is personality? See, we use words and terms and we don't define them, and so they're kind of meaningless and just blabber. Personality, essentially, is the way we perceive and process and present. Or if you wanted to make it some sort of math, it's perception plus processing equals presentation. So what you're getting right now is me perceiving and process nanoseconds, and you're getting it all. Every time you encounter a person, every relationship you've ever been in, you are in, and you will be in, you are dealing with the way a person perceives, processes, and presents themselves. Every single relationship. Now that right there should be like bing, 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 bing. Whoa, that's right. And listen, 90+% of all of our relational dysfunction happens at the level of perception. Whether the perception's correct or incorrect, a large percent of it happens at perception. And here's the crazy part. Most of us aren't even aware of how we perceive. We're just perceiving. Because you don't have these classes in school about self-awareness. We don't teach you this in elementary school, middle school, high school, college. You don't learn this unless you maybe go into psychology, right? Or sociology, right? And most of us have never dealt with this. So we're perceiving things, not even know we're perceiving things, and our perceptions greatly define how we're doing relationships. And we're not even aware of that. The Enneagram is going to make you aware of how you perceive, but also how you process. Enneagram is going to make you aware of how you process. When it comes to perceptions, there's three primary ways we perceive, right? We perceive the world in terms of connections. We perceive the world in terms of getting to a safe place. And then we perceive the world in terms of coming against us, perceptions. And then there's processing. Once you see something, once you hear something, right? That's perception. You do something with it. Your brain, your heart, your instincts, you do something with the information you perceive, you process it. So you say, well, how do we process? We're going to get into that. But primarily, there's three ways that we process as humans. We process through our feelings, we process through our thoughts, and we process through our instinct, okay? The Enneagram is going to unfold this. I told you, taking our socks and shoes off, putting our feet in. That's why I love this tool. It deals with the actual kind of what we might call anatomy of a human being. You know what I'm saying? The full anatomy of a human being. Now, once we perceive and process, what do? We present ourselves. So when you're interacting with a person, you're relating to their presentation, but behind the curtain is their perceptions and processes. And a lot of people aren't even aware of those things. They're just presenting. The Enneagram is designed to make you aware of how you perceive and process, which then is going to help you to transform and change the way you present when necessary. All right? Number 4, self-awareness allows us to do relationships well, right? So I have this saying, morality kills its thousands, self-awareness kills its tens of thousands. So what do I mean by that? So if you kill somebody, if you cheat, if you do something that's immoral, you're going to suffer the consequences. I know I've suffered the consequences. You are too. And you know people. We see it in the news, right? And we go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But if you stop and think, the majority of our relational issues are not rooted and grounded in like theft, murder, rape. No. The majority of relational problems you have at work, in your relationships with your partners, your spouses, your kids, your family, your friends, they're typically not crimes. Typically. They're relational dysfunctional issues related to the issue of people just aren't self-aware. You know, it's another phrase I use because I like illustrations that make things plain. I call it relational halitosis. Halitosis is the word for bad breath. So when someone has bad breath, you know they have bad breath, but they don't typically know they have bad breath. And it affects the way, at least for me, the way we do relationships with them, right? And they don't become aware of it until they have real friends who tell them, hey, your breath smells really bad. You need to go do something about it, right? You gotta deal with that, right? And so what happens is people aren't aware of how they're perceiving and presenting, so they're perceiving and processing. So they're presenting in ways that are harmful and dysfunctional. The Enneagram is a self-awareness tool designed to help you to do relationships well. Number 5, there are 5 factors that explain how we arrived where we are in our lives, right? The way we do relationships is usually impacted by these 5 factors, right? And these 5 factors also help to explain your Enneagram results, right? The first factor is what I call inherent distortions. What I simply mean by this is that every single person has things about them that aren't perfect. If you disagree with that, then you're in the wrong course. You're in the wrong course, right? I'm not here to tell you you're the worst person in the world. I'm not here to damage your self-esteem. I'm here to be honest with you. There is no one perfect, right? No one on this planet right now is perfect. You're not perfect, right? And so inherent distortions impact the way we do relationships. That should be a non-starter. Duh, of course, right? And what I mean by inherent, I mean that there's things about us that some of these things we're never going to fix because we're never going to be perfect, and they are going to play a role in how we do relationships. And here's the key. If we're aware of them, we can mitigate them. We can hinder them from having all of the jacked up functions they would have. If we're proud and ignorant, that's not going to be good. So the Enneagram helps you become a little bit more aware of your inherent distortions. Also, secondly, family of origins. What do I mean by this? Well, how you grew up or how you didn't grow up. What you were raised with or around. Who you were raised by. You see, most of how we learn to relate to things and people is we just see it, and because we're permeable and we just take it in. We're not actually like taught it, most of us, right? Sat down by our parents and taught like line by line. We see how our parents related or didn't relate. We see how our siblings relate or don't relate. We see how people relate on social media or how the Democrat, and we see this stuff and grow up, and we grew up that way, and we either go, I'm not doing that, or I'm doing that, and we kind of just intuitively just kind of figure it out, right? So the way you do relationship is impacted by inherent distortions, but also your family of origin. Now, if you're tracking with me, you're going, oh, wait a second. So yes, you need to be aware of that, right? Right. That's one of the reasons why I have another tool called the Life Map that helps you dive into family of origin in your past. Number 3, life circumstance. Okay, life circumstances. Those impact as well, right? So sometimes people say to me, well, how does a person become an 8 or 4 or 3, or why do I do this? Remember, the best thing about the Enneagram is you're going to ask questions you probably never asked yourself. Life circumstances can impact the way you perceive and process and present, right? Life circumstances can change you up. We all know this, right? And fourth, there's physical factors. Are you tall, short, overweight, skinny, right? Do you have a disease? Do you have a disability, mental or physical? Have you been wounded? Do you have some type of trauma? And the wound of that trauma is going to be with you for life. It doesn't mean it's going to define you. Physical factors. Are you diabetic? Are you like what's going on? Those all impact the way you perceive and process and present. And lastly, personal choices. The choices I make and the choices you make impact the way we do relationship. You say, well, duh. But here's the thing. These are things we don't typically factor in and we're not really aware of, right? These are 5 things that impact the way we do relationships. And we need to have those things in our mental storage and ready to go as we walk through understanding. Okay, so 6th thing, what the Enneagram is and isn't. I already touched on this. It's a tool. That's what it is. It's a tool. It's a ruler to measure. It's a leveling gauge. That's what it is. It's a wrench. It's a hammer, right? It's binoculars. It's an X-ray. It's a CAT scan, MRI. It's a blood test. It's a tool. Don't worship it. Don't join the Enneagram cult where for the next 6 months you can't even talk without Enneagram language. Don't walk up to people who've never heard about it. Don't be with your family being like, well, I learned I'm a 6 and blah, blah, blah. Like, don't do that to people. It's just weird. It's just weird. Keep it to yourself, right? And so don't exaggerate it, right? Don't diminish it. Don't exaggerate it, right? It's a tool. When used rightly, it's helpful. When exaggerated, it's not helpful. When diminished, it's not helpful. So be differentiated, all right? It's helpful. All right, so let's actually get into the components of the Enneagram, all right? And so the first component we get into in our Enneagram, the first component here is what we call this diagram and our dominant styles, okay? So I'm going to walk you through these dominant styles. I'm going to explain what these dominant styles are, okay? So the Enneagram suggests that when people perceive and process and present themselves, they tend to do so in one way primarily, okay? One way primarily. So the Enneagram suggests that out of all of the ways people can present themselves, there's typically 9 ways people present themselves. Think of this as a spear, right? And the tip of the spear is the way you're going to present yourself. It's what people are going to experience first, right? Here's a spear. This is you. This is what people are going to experience first. What's on the tip of that spear? That would be your dominant style. It's the primary way that you present yourself, but it's also the way that your perceptions and processes, it's what your perceptions and processes produce, right? This is you, okay? So there's 9 styles. And and you can see them here: the perfectionist, the helper, the achiever, the artist, the thinker, the loyalist, the adventurer, the challenger, and the mediator, the peacemaker, right? And there's lots of names for these. And if you go on the internet, people have gotten really, because the Enneagram's really popular, not as much anymore, but it had a peak. And so there's tons of books and tons of YouTubers and tons of people. And so some people have changed the names of all these and gotten fancy. Each one of the numbers has 4, 5, 6, 7 synonyms and all these types of things. But essentially, right? Essentially, there's 9 styles. Here's what you need to get out of this. When you take your Enneagram, you're going to come out with a dominant style. It does not mean that's all you are. It means you need to be aware of the following thing: that when you do relationships with people and things, the way you're prone to do relationships is through that dominant style. And the way people experience you is through that dominant style. And that right there is worth all of your time so far. All the time you spent here, that's worth everything. If you could know, how am I prone to show up in relationships, whether to things or people, that's a really big deal. If you could know, what are people likely to experience when they're in a relationship with me? What are people likely to experience when they're in a relationship with me? That's a self-awareness question. The Enneagram will say they're likely to experience the traits of a 1, the traits of a 5, the traits of an 8, the traits of a 9, because that's your dominant style. So your dominant style is how you are prone to show up in relationships and do relationships, okay? Your dominant style. Now, there's some things that accompany your dominant style, and we need to get into them, all right? So you can see the dominant styles here. And then if you go to your profile, for example, I'll show you my profile, and I will show you what your profile is going to look like, okay? So your profile is going to look like this right here. This is my profile. You could see that I'm a dominant 8. That's my dominant style, right? And you can see all the other styles. And we're going to talk about them and your relationship with them and how those walk their way in. You'll see that, right? You can see all that. And then you can see the second thing we're going to talk about is not only a dominant style, but everybody in the Enneagram has a dominant style. And the way you know your dominant style is it's the highest total score in your columns, but we're going to get to scoring, all right? So you have a dominant style, but the second thing that you need to see is your wing. Okay, you need to see your wing. So let me show you. When we're talking about wings, let me show you what we're talking about. Okay. Oh, that got all messed up. All right. Okay, you need to see your wing. All right, so your wing is the number closest to your dominant style. So remember when I was looking at my profile, I'll show you that again in a minute. You could see a dotted line, and I'm going to show you that, okay? But if you're an 8, your wing's either a 7 or 9. If you're a 9, your wing's either an 8 or a 1. It's the number closest to your dominant style, and it has everything to do with how you took your profile and how you answered your profile. Remember? The Enneagram is not the Torah, it's not the Quran, it's not the Bible. It only puts out the data that you put into it, right? So every Enneagram wing is going to either be to the left or the right of a style. Now, what's a wing? If you consider your dominant style like a cup of coffee, your wing is like cream and sugar, okay? Your wing is like cream and sugar. It doesn't change the essence of the coffee, but it flavors it. That's your wing, all right? So we go back to my profile. I'll show you how it clearly says this, and yours will be kind of demarcated as well in terms of how your Enneagram looks. You'll see that, look at my wing here. You see it's 8, 7, and you can see it's demonstrated by this chopped up line, right? You see that. Now, the Enneagram's templates, this one's old. The data's still the same. They just get a little bit more artsy, okay? So yours is going to have some type of colored line that will distinguish or show you what your wing is. So if you're looking at your Enneagram diagram, you see the 9 styles, your dominant style, your number is going to be highlighted. That's your dominant style. That's the primary way that you are prone, especially if you're not aware, to do to relationships, right? But the wing is your cream and sugar. It influences your dominant style. So I'm a powerful person with some joyful person influence, right? And those two things go together. So when I do relationship with people, that's what people are prone to experience, unless I'm self-aware, right? Unless I'm aware enough, unless there's some issues or I'm stressed out, and that's not, we'll get to that, but that's what they're prone to do. So when you're looking at your Enneagram, that's what you are looking at. You're looking at these dominant styles, and you're looking at the way that they are affected by their wings, all right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to take a look at the styles themselves and read basically some descriptions of these styles, okay? So we're going to walk through them. And as we're walking through these, we're going to be saying to ourselves all these styles, but particularly paying attention to the styles that are dominants, okay? So those of you who are type 1s, they're conscientious, ethical, they got a strong sense of right and wrong, they're teachers, crusaders, advocates for change, always striving to improve things but afraid of making a mistake. They're well organized, orderly, and fastidious. They try to maintain high standards. They can slip into being critical and perfectionistic, and they typically have problems with resentment and impatience. You can see at their best, they're wise, discerning, realistic, noble, can be morally heroic. Their basic fear is being corrupt, evil, defective. Their basic desire to be good, to have integrity, and to be balanced. 2s, the helper connector. They're empathetic, sincere, warm-hearted. They're friendly, generous, self-sacrificing. They can also be sentimental, flattering, people-pleasing. They're well-meaning, driven to be close to others, but can slip into doing things for others in order to be needed. They typically have problems with possessiveness and with acknowledging their own needs. And at their best, unselfish, altruistic. They have unconditional love for others. Their fear, being unwanted, unworthy of being loved, and to feel loved. As we're walking through these, remember, the design of the Enneagram is to make you aware of your dominant style and of your wings. So you're looking at your dominant style and your wing. One of these is going to describe your dominant style and your wing. It's going to make you aware, not only of how you're prone to relate to others, but of to things. All right, so let's talk about 3s, okay? So the type 3. So 3s are self-assured, attractive, charming, ambitious, competent, energetic. They can also be status conscious and highly driven for advancement. They're diplomatic and poised, but also can be overly concerned with their image and what others think of them. They typically have problems with workaholism and competitiveness, and at their best, self-accepting, authentic, everything seems to be okay, role models who inspire others. Their basic fear is of being worthless. Their basic desire to feel valuable and worthwhile. Enneagram 3s with 2 wing, the charmer. Enneagram 3 with a 4 ring, the professional. You know, as we go through these styles, we've already been through 3. What are the things that you're going to see over and over and over again is just the kind of, we might say, the clarity that this provides for you as a person who continues to strive for self-awareness of what are you prone to be like in relationships with others and things, okay? And so what's important to get out of these is not that this is the all-in-all description of the person, but that this is generally within the ballpark, okay? Let's move on to 4s. 4s are self-aware, sensitive, and reserved. They're emotionally honest, creative, and personal, but can also be moody and self-conscious. withholding themselves from others due to feeling vulnerable and defective. They can also feel disdainful and exempt from ordinary ways of living. They typically have problems with melancholy, self-indulgence, and self-pity. At their best, inspired and highly creative, they are able to renew themselves and transform their experiences. Basic fear, they have no identity or personal significance. Basic desire, to find themselves in their significance, to create an identity. You know, you haven't experienced the Enneagram until it starts to hurt. So when these things are describing you, if it doesn't hurt, you ain't really experiencing the Enneagram. Type 5, the thinker, the observer. 5s are alert, insightful, curious. They're able to concentrate and focus on developing complex ideas and skills, independent, innovative, inventive. They can also become preoccupied with their thoughts and imaginary constructs. They become detached, yet highly strung and intense. They typically have problems with this is true. And I go to the 5 space. Eccentricity. Nihilism and isolation. At their best, visionary pioneers, often ahead of their time and able to see the world an entirely new way. Basic fear, being useless, helpless, and incapable. Basic desire, be capable and competent. 6s, loyalists and faithful. A lot of 6s. The committed, secure-oriented type. 6s are reliable, hardworking, responsible, trustworthy, excellent troubleshooters. They foresee problems and foster cooperation, but also become defensive, evasive, and anxious, running on stress while complaining about it. They can be cautious and indecisive, but also reactive, defiant, and rebellious. They typically have problems with self-doubt and suspicion. At their best, internally stable and self-reliant, courageously champions themselves and others. Basic fear of being without support and guidance. Basic desire to have security and support. 7s, my 7s. Remember, I'm an 8-wing 7, so now you're getting touchy with me. 7s are extroverted, optimistic, versatile, spontaneous, playful, high-spirited, practical. They can also misapply their many talents, become overextended, scattered, and undisciplined. They constantly seek new and exciting experiences, but can become distracted and exhausted by staying on the go. They typically have problems with impatience and impulsiveness. No. Yes. At their best, they focus their talents on worthwhile goals, becoming appreciative, joyous, and satisfied. Basic fear, being deprived and in pain. 7s don't like pain of any type. Basic desire, to be satisfied and content, to have their needs fulfilled. 8s, we don't even need to read this because we're perfect. Just go on to the rest of you peasants. 8s, challengers, leaders. 8s are self-confident, strong and assertive, protective, resourceful, straight-talking, and decisive, but can also be egocentric, domineering. No. 8s feel they must control their environment, especially people, sometimes becoming confrontational and intimidating. 8s typically have problems with their tempers and with allowing themselves to be vulnerable. Nah. At their best, self-mastering. They use their strength to improve others' lives, become heroic, magnanimous, and inspiring. Basic fear, being harmed and controlled by others. That's true. Basic desire, to protect themselves, to be in control of their life and destiny. That's true, for better or worse. It's true. And then we got the 9. 9s are accepting, trusting, and stable. They're usually creative, optimistic, supportive, but also can be too willing to go along with others to keep the peace. They want everything to go smoothly and be without conflict, but they can also tend to be complacent, simplifying problems and minimizing anything upsetting. They typically have problems with inertia and stubbornness. At their best, indomitable and all-embracing. They're able to bring people together and heal conflicts. Basic fear of loss and separation. Basic desire to have inner stability and peace of mind. So you will have this document, and you'll be able to look at it. And what's key here is just to be able to say, okay, remember, interpreting, understanding, and applying my Enneagram. Okay, so if you're a dominant style 8, you're like, oh, okay, these are my proneses. This is what I'm prone to be like in relationship, right? And if my wing is a 7, here you go. So that's the cream and sugar pouring into that coffee as the 8. That's how you begin to understand that. Okay. Okay, So we talked about wings, right? We talked about wings, and we talked about how the fact that they're like the cream and sugar. And I showed you my profile of how to identify your wing. And now you know that as you're looking at the styles, if I'm an 8, wing 7, then the cream and sugar is the 7 stuff that's going into 8. What's the point of the Enneagram? To make you aware. So it's not a label that you stick on your chest and you roll. It's an awareness. So I need to be aware of my 8 tendencies and of how my 7 is impacting my 8 tendencies. I need to be aware of that because that's how I'm prone to perceive and process and present myself, which is why I need to be aware of that, right? We tracking? All right. So let's look at some stress and security issues. And to do so, we'll go back to the diagram we started here. Here's something amazing about the Enneagram, all right? So the Enneagram tells you or suggests what you're prone to do under stress and what you're prone to do when you're secure. Remember, I told you there's layers to this. So you got dominant style, you got wing. We just walked through the descriptions of all the styles, right? Now, the Enneagram suggests that every dominant style is prone to what I call soul movement or personality movement, right? Movement. Now, this should not be a surprising factor because if someone calls you tomorrow morning and says, guess what? You didn't know that you had a great uncle and they left you $300,000. I don't think you'd be like, oh, okay. You'd probably have some type of reaction. In other words, we're susceptible to things happening and us moving in a direction. If you go outside and you're on your way to work and you run into standstill traffic, it can change your life, right? So we're prone to things to make us change. So the Enneagram suggests that every style is prone to going somewhere under stress and it's prone to receiving something when they're secure. So let's use my style, the 8. And we have these arrows drawn here on purpose. So the 8 is prone to go where under stress? What does the arrow say? Where's the 8 prone to go? Right? That 8 is prone to go where? To the 5 space, right? Under stress. And what is the 8 prone to do? To receive from the 2, okay? Receive from the 2. So every single dominant style has this. Doesn't matter what style you are, you can find your style and go, oh, stress, you move away from your dominant style. Security, you receive something from the style that you're connected to. So for the 9, they move to the 6, they receive from the 3. The 1 moves to the 4, they receive from the 7. You can go around. The 2 goes to the 4 goes to the 8 under stress and receives from the 4. Okay, the 3 goes to the 9, receives from the 6, and you can go all the way around this. Right? Why is this important? Well, I need to know what I'm prone to be like under stress because life is relational, right? And I want to relate well, even under stress. Is the mathing for you? Under stress. So the Enneagram tells you what you're prone to be like even under stress. What you're prone to be like when you're secure. So again, let's pick on me, the 8. When I am stressed, I'm prone to go to the 5 space. Here's how you practically understand that. If I'm prone to go to the 5 space, I go to the 5 and I go, well, what are 5s like? Well, they're alert, insightful, curious. They're able to concentrate and focus on developing complex ideas and skills. They're independent, innovative, inventive. They also become preoccupied with their thoughts and imaginary constructs. They can become detached, high-strung, and intense. So what's happening here is under stress, we tend to take on the negative characteristics or the dysfunctional characteristics or what we call the non-resourceful characteristics of each style. So I need to know that. When I'm under stress, I tend to detach. I get quiet, isolated, and go deep into this 5 stuff. Preoccupation with my thoughts, constructs. I'm high-strung, intense, and I just get quiet, isolated. That's what happens, right? I have this, I adopt a lot of these characteristics, right? So you need to know, what am I like under stress? What am I prone to do in a relationship when it's stressed out? But also, the 8 draws from the 2 when they're secure. In other words, when all you guys listen to me and do what I say, I'm pretty happy. And I not only have the wing of the 7, but that 2 becomes my cream and sugar too. And now you see empathy and sincere and warm-hearted, and you go, wow, this 8 who seems so he's actually nice, and he's sweet, and he's generous. It's like, yeah, I feel secure. You're saying, wait a second. So when you're not that, and you're under stress, you're kind of isolated and quiet, pretty much. And when you're, yes, is it going off, right? And let's do this with another style, okay? Let's just do this with 6s, okay? We'll just pick 6s. So the 6s under stress are prone to go to the 3. They're prone, when they're not under stress, they receive from the 9. So we saw what 6s are, right? The loyalist, the faithfulness, the reliable, hard worker. They can be cautious and all those types of things. So they go to the 3 under stress. So now you have this pedantic, slow person in terms of how they go about things, not slow in a detrimental way, but really faithful person. And under stress, 6s are prone to make decisions like this, out of their comfort zone, right? And they're prone to flattery, and they're prone to like cut corners and to do things in ways that aren't holistic, right? Like a non-resourceful 3 would. And they're like, well, what happened to me? You were stressed out and you started living different. Conversely, when a 6 is secure, they draw from the 9. So not only do you have this 6 energy, this reliableness, this faithfulness, and all of those things, you also get with it many of the characteristics of the peacemaker. Are you tracking? Let me just got a warning light that I might be running out of power. I don't want that to happen. That's a no-no. All right, so you're tracking with me. All right, so what you need to catch out of all this, okay, is that the Enneagram suggests that you are prone to go somewhere under stress, and you're prone to receive something when you're secure. That's what you need to know. That's what you need to know. Whatever your dominant style is, you're prone to go somewhere and take on the attributes of the other style under stress. Doesn't mean you're absolutely going to, but the Enneagram suggests that's what you're prone to do unless you're aware, right? So the way this works is if I'm 8 and I get under stress, I'm prone to be quiet. What would it look like for me not to go to that space? Not be quiet, communicate, to talk, to not isolate. It's easier said than done, but it can be done, right? It has been done. That's what this means practically. Also, it also means that when I feel secure and I'm generous and kind and I'm kind of imbibing my 2 energy and I'm caring for people, that's an indicator that, hey, I think the world's going pretty good. Also, if you're on the other end of this, right? This is how this works relationally. If someone's in a relationship with me and they see that I'm quiet and isolated, what might they conclude? He might be under stress. Maybe. How you doing? You feeling stressed? That's how this works. Conversely, if they see me generous and all, they might go, he's feeling pretty secure, right? This is how this works relationally, okay? You tracking with me? All right, so let's keep it going. We talked about stress moves, secure moves. Now, what we want to do now is we want to talk a little bit about scoring, okay? Before we get to the end and the tryout. We want to talk about scoring, all right? So, in your Enneagram, you have the diagram, but you also have a box of scoring, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you my Enneagram so that you can see what perfection looks like. I'm kidding. It's a 7. That's a great thing when you start doing Enneagram, you can just blame stuff on your numbers. You can just say, oh, it's my 7. Oh, it's my 3. Don't do that. People do that. It drives me nuts. Oh, it's my 4. Oh, it's my this. Don't talk in Enneagram-ish. Don't do that, okay? All right. So you're going to have a box that looks something like this. Yours is going to be cleaner and neater because it's the newer form, right? But essentially, you're going to have scoring, okay? Remember I told you there's levels to this. So here's what you need to know about scoring. You've got scoring on all the styles. You say, but you talked about a dominant style and a wing and stress and security. I know. I told you the Enneagram is a holistic personal awareness tool. You didn't believe me. And I told you it was holistic. You got scoring on all the styles, right? Because although you have a dominant style, you are very complex. You're one of the most, if not the most complex entities in the known universe. You should not expect anything different than to have scoring on every styles. It's one of the reasons why I like the Enneagram. Because anything that's overly reductionistic to reduce you to this or that and that's it is a little bit too truncated for me. It's a little bit too boxy for me. You following? Okay? So you have scoring on all the styles. So let's understand what we're looking at. Okay? You have total scores, resourceful, and non-resourceful scores. Okay? I'm going to define all this for you. Here's what you need to know about scoring. 0 to 30 means it's not that influential in your life. So if you look at your scoring and you're looking at my scoring, you're going, okay, I'm looking at your scoring and I'm seeing your total score category. You guys see that? 0 to 30. You're saying, well, you've got an 11.0 there on the 6. Oh, is that good or bad? We'll get into it. And you've got a 20, so 0 to 30. That means that doesn't have a big influence in your life, right? Right. So 0 to 30, not that much influence. 30 to 60 means it's showing up regularly in your life and people probably notice it even if you don't. So let's look at my Enneagram. So everything else, we got a 48. Then what's the next highest score? Let's see here. That would be the 65 of the 7. And then the 69 of the 5, and then everything goes up. You got the 72, so you got that right there. 30 to 60. So I've got one score in the 30 to 60. I've got two scores in the 0 to 30s, not that much influence. I've got one score in the 30 to 60, which means it's showing up whether I'm aware of it or not. So that 48 is there, whether I'm aware of it or not. And then anything 60 and above is a dominant influence. What that means is people are experiencing it whether you know it or not, right? Total scores. Let me use an analogy. If we have a glass and you're a glass of water, your total score represents how much water is in that glass. So the closer you get to 100, remember this isn't a test, so 100 is not perfect. It's amount of influence. It's how prevalent that style is in your life. It's how much that style shows up in its perception and processing and presentation in your life. How much water is in the glass. So you can see that my dominant score is what? What do you see there? It's an 8, 94.5. That means there's a lot of water in that glass. So I'm all 8 every day. Every month, every year, I wake up, I'm 8. When I wake up, lightsaber comes on. Unless I'm aware. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm a power person. I'm ready to go. I wake up, boom. It's 94.5. I mean, I'm close. I'm 5.5 points away from 100, right? So 0 to 30, not much influence. 30 to 60, there's influence, whether you're aware. Anything 60 and above, it's influence, it's dominant influence. So you look at your scoring on yours and you start to look down your total scores. Now, here's what some of you are looking at right now. Some of you are looking at a lot of high scores. You're like, man, all my scores are high. Okay. Some of you are looking at your total scores and you're like, man, all my scores are low. What does that mean? Okay. What's the best thing about the Enneagram? You remember? You start asking questions about yourself and about it that you never asked. So sometimes low scores, remember, this isn't a test, this isn't performance. Sometimes low scores are indicative of a lack of awareness, right? If you've never really thought about who you are and what you are, and when you did the Enneagram, it showed up in low scores. I've done thousands of these. I've done Enneagrams where people's highest score was a 33. And their whole total scores, their highest score was a 33. And this was for the kindest, sweetest, most faithful, intelligent, generous, sacrificial man you ever met. And he was just his highest score was a 33, and it was a 6. You thought, well, you're describing a person who's like a 2, and what were their 2 score? Like a 13. You said, well, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. That person didn't think much about themselves. And when you peeled the onion of their story was riddled with abuse, both them being abused and then them abusing, and they just wanted to forget themselves and be a good person. So they didn't think a lot about themselves, and they never thought much of themselves. So when they took the profile and the profile started trying to pull what they knew about themselves, watch this, they were like, oh, I'm nothing, don't worry about it. I don't know. And it came out in their scoring. Sometimes low scores are indicative that you don't know yourself. Sometimes low scores means they're just low scores. Scoring is always an invitation, not condemnation. Let me say that again. Your scores are invitations, not condemnations. Remember, this is a self-awareness tool, not a test. Oh, I did bad. Oh, I did good. Get that out of your mind. It's about awareness. Low scores sometimes can be evident of a lack of awareness. High scores can sometimes be a lack of awareness. I've done thousands of these, and I've seen people come back with high scores, and they look like they Jesus. I mean, they got hundreds and 99s and 98s, and one I did, their lowest score was like a 97.9. And I was looking at all their totals, and I was like, man, I've never seen Jesus in the flesh, but you are close to him because you rock it. And that's not a person who's very self-aware. You say, what if they're confident? What is this? This is a self-awareness profile. It's designed to make you aware. And if they're that confident, you got to know that in every relationship they're in, people are experiencing that confidence. And I'll let you be the judge whether that's good all the time. I'm just saying, right? Humility can go a long way. So scoring, 0 to 30, not much influence. 30 to 60, more influence. Anything 60 and above, dominant influence. What if I have low scores? Might mean you're just not aware. What if I have high scores? Might mean you're exaggerated. What if I have high scores? Might mean that's showing up in your life. It might mean you're just a more well-developed and rounded person, and all those things are showing up. It might mean all of that stuff. Scores are invitations, not condemnations. Total scores. What? How much influence in my life, right? How much water's in the glass? But now we got 2 other columns when we understand our scoring. We have resourceful and non-resourceful. So resourceful, let me show you this. Resourceful, you should see resourcefulness as that which fosters and cultivates healthy relationships. Look at this right here. So resourceful means using the style in a way that loves others and cultivates a healthy relationship. Non-resourceful, using the style in a way that isn't loving and destroys relationships. Okay? Resourceful and non-resourceful. So the beauty of the Enneagram is it doesn't just say, here's your numbers, here's your styles, and here's your scoring, but it goes on to say, hey, I want you to see that there's ways in which you use your styles for good, and there's ways that you're prone to use it not so good, right? So glass of water, let's use me. What do you see? You see 94.5 in my dominant style. That's 60 and above. That means it's showing up. I'm eight all the time. That's what you're getting. You're getting the powerful person. All the good, sometimes the bad, right? Now let's go to the resourceful, non-resourceful. We got the glass of water. That glass of water is almost at the top. Resourceful and non-resourceful tells you the quality of the water. Your total scores tell you the quantity of the water. Your resourceful and non-resourceful tells you the quality of the water. Remember I said if you're doing Enneagram and you don't ever have moments of like, ooh, ouch, really? I don't know if I like that. This is weird. If you don't have those moments, then you ain't doing the Enneagram right. Someone's not explaining it to you, or you just took it online and went, oh, I'm a 4 and I should marry an 8. Label, going with your life. It ain't about that. This is a self-development process and a journey, right? We're doing this for life. We're putting tools in our toolbox so that we can have them and we can pull them out for the rest of our life so that we can experience more self-awareness and relational aptitude and increase in personal skills and vocational effectiveness and fulfillment in life. This is a tool. This is a holism, right? So when it comes to my profile, what do you see? What do you see in those scores? Well, you see a 97.7 in the resourceful and an 87.2. Some of you are saying, well, your resourceful score is higher than your total score. Yeah? And your non-resourceful score is dominant. It's 87.2. What does that mean? It means there's a skew. It means 97.7 is greater than, remember old school, greater than 87.2. You say, well, what does that mean? It means that I've got a little bit more clean water than dirty water. Like I tell you, I like simple illustrations. It means I'm slightly more prone to use my 8 stuff resourcefully to love people and construct and cultivate relationships than I am to destroy people. But my non-resourceful is 87.2. You say, what does that mean? Great question. What's the best thing about the Enneagram? You ask questions you never ask. What does it mean that you're an 87.2? It means I need to be aware. I'm prone to be Darth Vader. I need to be aware. I'm prone to that. I have weaknesses, right? I have imperfections. And if I'm not aware, I could use my 8 stuff to harm people instead of to love people, to destroy rather than to build, right? So, when you look at your Enneagram, you're going to see your, what we call scores. Some of you are saying, but my total score on my dominant is lower than my resourceful and non-resourceful. That's fine. You say, it is? Yes. What are scores? Invitations, not condemnations. So you say, well, should I want my scores to be higher? It depends. What columns should you want higher scores in? Look at my columns. Should you want higher scores in your total scores? Yes, of course. Ideally, yes. Should you want higher scores in your resourceful? Yes. Should you want higher scores in your non-resourceful? No. So if you were to take the Enneagram this year and to take it in 10 years, what might you hope was true if you took it in 2034? Okay? You would hope that your total scores would go up or down? Up. You would hope that your resourceful scores would go up or down? Up. You would hope that your non-resourceful scores would go what? Up or down? Down. Let me use another illustration. If Jesus took the Enneagram, what would his total scores be? I know some of you are not religious, so just go along with it. Don't be whatever. Don't just go along with it. Well, 100. What would his resourceful scores be? 100. What would his non-resourceful scores be? Zeros. Okay? Invitations, not condemnations. Our goal, which we'll never reach, is to be aware so that we're open to changing, especially those things that are harmful for our relationship to both people and things, so that we see an increase in our total scores, we see an increase in our resourceful scores, and we see a decrease in our non-resourceful characteristics. Every single style has the ability to be resourceful or non-resourceful. The amazing thing about the Enneagram is it doesn't just typecast you, give you a label and say, you're a 5, you're a 7. It tells you you're a 7 with this proneness in your relationships, resourceful, non-resourceful. Now, some of you have what I would call a lot of positive skews. A positive skew is what you see in my 8. It's when your resourceful score is greater than your non-resourceful. Some of you have a lot of negative skews. It's when your resourceful score is greater than your positive. I have some of those as well. For example, look at my 7. It's a 65.6. That's dominant, right? Look at my resourceful, 49.0. That's 30 to 60, right? It's showing up. But look at my non-resourceful 7, 75.2. The skew is this way. It's this way, right? It's a negative skew. It's greater than. So the less non-resourceful is greater than the resourceful. You say, what does that mean? It means that when it comes to my 7, I'm more prone to gravitate towards the negative or dysfunctional or the relational harmful components of the 7 than the resourceful components. It's not predicting. This ain't prophecy. This is what I put in my Enneagram. The scores you have are the scores you put in. You answered it. They're your scores. If you don't like them, you look yourself in the mirror. This is one of the reasons why, some people, when I do this with them, they'll do the Enneagram like 4 or 5 times till they get the score they want. That's called a false self. That's crazy, right? It's just nuts. Well, I took it 4 or 5 times, instead of just saying, look, take it once and deal with the results, because the idea is for self-awareness. So some of you have positive skews, negative skews, right? You have positive skews, resourceful skews, or non-resourceful skews. That's the language I should use. Resourceful skews, non-resourceful skews. What do the skews mean? The skews mean I'm more prone to be resourceful in that style, non-resourceful. Let's look back at mine. What in my 1, am I more prone to be, do I have a resourceful or non-resourceful skew? Resourceful. In my 2, it's resourceful. In my 3, it's close, isn't it? It's an 84.9 to an 87.4. You say, what happens if it's close? It's close. Well, what does that mean? It means there's a slight little bitty. And this all comes down to awareness. It means I'm just as prone to be a resourceful 3 as a non-resourceful 3. That's what it means. So what does that mean to me? It means I need to be self-aware. It means I need to be asking myself questions and doing evaluations on my behavior. I need to be really in the moment and present and conscious with myself. And I need to have at least one real friend who can not judge me all the time, but when they see a skew, they're able to say, hey, I've noticed this. What's going on? Are you okay? Not like, hey, I noticed this, you're a jerk. No, I noticed this. What's happening? What's going on? Everybody needs that person, right? To help them in their self-awareness journey, because we can't do this effectively alone. It's not just the Enneagram and you, right? So on your scoring, if you look at it, what you're going to see is you're going to see total scores, resourceful scores, non-resourceful scores, all right? We got scoring? All right, let me show you one last thing about the Enneagram. It is my favorite thing about the Enneagram. It's called the triad, okay? It's called the triad. So we talked about all these styles, and these styles are broken down into a triad, okay? So the triads are 2s, 3s, and 4s. That's the heart triad. 5s, 6s, and 7s. That's the head triad. And the perfect triad is the 8, 9, and 1. All of us perfect people. Okay? So the reason why we have triads in the Enneagram, this is why I said there's levels to this. Shoes and socks off, feet in the pool. I told you, you can go deep in all of these things. Is because the styles have things in common with one another, which puts them into a triad. Now the triads and the graph is meant to simply make you more aware of your dominant style, which is in a triad, and to show you what you're prone to be like. So what I did is I created this box, right? So you'll notice it says the triads, and you see heart, head, and gut. And then you'll see some phrases, how they perceive, how they process, how they present, underlying emotion, how each styles manages the above underlying emotion, and the underlying question. Okay, so if you're in the heart triad, you say, well, how do I know which triad I'm in? What's your dominant style? If I'm an 8, right? If I'm an 8, what's my dominant style? Look at the bottom. See the 8 down there in the right column? That means I'm in what triad? Gut, right? So how do I know what triad I'm in? Well, what's your dominant style? That's how you know. All right. Okay, so if you're in the heart triad, you're a 2, 3, or 4, dominant 2, 3, or 4, right? Doesn't matter if you're a 2-wing 1. If you're a 2, 3, or 4, 4-wing 5, if you're 2, 3, or 4, you're in the heart triad. Okay, here's what you need to know about yourself. You perceive life in terms of connections to be made. 2s, 3s, and 4s, when they look at the world, they're like connect, connect, not connect, not connect, connect, somewhat connect, connect. Everything's about connections. It's all about connections. They're highly relational. They're the most relational people on the planet. They're the people that if you're not in this triad, if you're in the headspace and you're like, no, I'm just gonna go to the party and sit in the corner, right? If you're that person, or if you're like me, you're like, what's happening when they're the people that can also kind of be like, you can wish you were them. They walk into a space and like, they're just crazy relational. 2s, 3s, and 4s. They do relationships like we breathe. It's effortless. They just do it. But they perceive everything is a connection. If you are in a relationship with a person that's a 2, 3, or 4, everything's a connection. Are you tracking? What happens when the Wi-Fi goes out? Beep. Everything's a connection. Just remember that. If you're a 2, 3, or 4, everything's a connection. They process with their feelings. It doesn't mean that they only use their feelings because remember, you have scoring in all of the triads, but they process with their feelings. The dominant way that they process is with their feelings. It's not with their cognition and it's not with their intuition. The dominant way. Their feelings lead the way, how they feel. Right? They present themselves relationally. They show up. They're very relational people. If you walk into a scene, you can usually tell the 2s, 3s, and 4s because they're going to be more of the huggers and the touchers and proximities. They're just relational, right? Okay. Now, every triad has an underlying emotion, and the underlying emotion for the 2s, 3s, and 4s is shame. What's an underlying emotion? It's an emotion that's underlying. It's the whole iceberg thing, where the tip of the iceberg is connections, feelings, and relationally. The rest of the iceberg is often shame. What's shame? Shame is an I am wrong emotion, and it's an identity-based emotion. Okay? It's different than guilt. Guilt is a performance-based emotion. You feel guilt when you've done something bad or when you didn't do something right. It's performance. Shame is a present tense emotion. It's something that just sits there. You don't have to do anything wrong to feel shame. You just feel it. You just feel like you're wrong, even if you're not. You just feel like I'm defective, but you just built this business. I'm defective. But you raise these kids. I'm defective. But you help these people. I just feel like a bad person. But you're not. I know, but I just feel that way. That's shame. So the underlying emotion of the 2s, 3s, and 4 is shame. And what this means for you who are in relationships with shame, this is a personality awareness tool, a self-awareness tool for relationships, is that means there's such thing as shame triggers. Like, we don't need you. That's a shame trigger. I know why you don't need me because of X, Y, Z, right? I'm shame. So shame. Now, how does these styles deal with shame? The 2s do it with serving, 3s do it with succeeding, and the 4s are special. In other words, we're all managing these emotions. We usually manage them subconsciously. We usually manage them without awareness. What is the Enneagram? It's a self-awareness profile designed to do what? To make you more aware of how you do relationships. But it's also designed to get you to go under the hood of your, right, of your being and get you to realize if you're in the heart triad, you're dealing with shame. Shame is going to impact how you perceive and process and present yourself. So what people tend to do, 2s tend to think like this. I feel shame. The way I'm going to overcome it is by serving. Because if I serve or care for people enough, I don't feel so bad about myself. Look at how I'm helping people. 3s do it by being successful, which is why it's so devastating when they're not. Because it tends to tell them, see, there's something wrong with you. You couldn't even be successful. But success mitigates the shame. And 4s do it by being special. This is why 4s dress different. They're kind of outliers, and they want to be different. They want to be special. So these are not good ways to deal with shame. These are dysfunctional ways to deal with shame. And we're going to get to the way the head triad and the gut triad does it with it too. But you need to be aware of this. If you're a 2, you do not need to be dealing with shame by caring and serving. There's a better way to deal with shame, right? There's a more holistic way to deal with shame. There's a way to heal that shame and reconcile that so that you have a healthier relationship with that emotion. So serving, and here's their underlying question. What is underlying again? Beneath the water, which means it's predominantly subconscious. But 2s, 3s, and 4s are always asking this question of you. Who am I? It's an identity-based emotion. Who am I? Right? When you say I don't need you, you just told them who they were. Well, I'm not very valuable. That's how they see things. Who am I? That's the fundamental question if you're a 2, 3, or 4 that you're always asking. To be aware of the fact that life is about connections to you, well, you need to come to the reality. You can't be connected to everybody, even some of the people you want to be connected to. And you're going to have to really come to grips with that. Life's about feelings. Yeah, it's true. And you feel deeply, and we need people who feel things. Lord, have mercy. Some of us don't feel anything. But you got to keep in check, right? Relationally, some relationships are good. Some are toxic. Got to be differentiated. Shame. Serving, successful, and special. We need to gravitate away from dealing with shame in those non-resourceful ways. And then this question, who am I? You are the best person to answer that question. And the only other person I think is better to answer that question for you is God. Right? If you have a really, really, really trusted friend or spouse or partner, they can answer it too. If you have a mature child, they might be able to answer for it to you. Okay? Head triad. How do they perceive? Let's get to a safe space, baby. It's all about safe spaces. Safe places. Let's get to a safe place. How do they process? Cognition. They live in their minds. Always. Thinking. 5, 6s, and 7s. Think. Thoughts. Bzzz. How do they present? We got it all figured out. That's why in organizations, 5, 6s, and 7s, well, not so much you 7s. Y'all be liking to have too much fun. But a lot of those 5s and 6s, that's why we trust them with everything. I like to say that In relational environments, people tend to throw up on 5s and 6s. 5s because they listen. They want to know information. They draw out stuff. 6s because y'all are so faithful. We trust you guys. You're not going anywhere. You're dependable, right? That's where you are. So, but you present having things figured out. The 2s, 3s, and 4s, they're relational, the life of the party. The 5s, 6s, and 7s, they're looking for all the things that are going to go wrong. They've made all the preparations so things won't go wrong. They're the people who are probably like set the party up, managing the party, right? Making sure there's fun. The 7s on the dance floor, they're the DJs. Woohoo! Let's get the drinks. Let's get it going. Yeah. 7s cutting the rug and all that stuff. The 6s are making sure everything's going to plan. They got like a binder with the numbers and names and all that stuff. And the 5s are the people who are involved in the planning. They're sitting back observing. I already found 3 ways we could do this party different. But they're all looking for a safe place. Safe place. Because their underlying emotion is fear. And fear is a proximity-based emotion. If you're afraid of snakes, you're not now. But if you live in Florida like I do, you walk outside and you're afraid of snakes, what you looking for? Especially when you get close to the water and the shrubs, snakes. You don't like crocodiles and alligators? You get it. If you're afraid of heights, I'm not afraid of heights now because I'm sitting in a chair. When I get on an airplane, yeah. When I go across bridges, yeah. Right? Proximity-based. So, the head triad is afraid that they're going to end up in a place that isn't safe. So what do? The heart triad served, was successful, and was special to deal with shame. The head triad, the 5s are obsessed with facts, the 6s are faithful, and the 7s are like, let's just have fun and forget about it. That's how you deal with fear. That's what the Enneagram is suggesting. 5s want facts. More information, more information, more information. Why? Because the more information I have, the safer I feel. 6s want faithfulness. I need predictability. I need to know where you're going, what you're doing, why you're doing, who you're doing with, how you're doing it. I need to know all those things for myself. I need to know my workplace. I need to know all this stuff. I got to know all this stuff. Why? Because I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? That we aren't in a safe place, you aren't in a safe place, I'm not in a safe place. 7s. This is stressing me out. Let's have some fun. What's their fundamental question? Who or where am I? Not who am I, where am I? Why do they ask where am I? Because they want a safe place. Am I in a safe relationship? Am I in a safe job? Am I in a safe relationship with my family? Where am I? What's going on? Where am I? That's their underlying question. They're always asking it. So if you're in a relationship with a dominant 5, 6, or 7, even if they never ask the question, you can answer it for them in what you say to them and how you treat them. Finally, the gut triad. They perceive the world as against them. 8s, 9s, and 1s. Against them. That means they're like this. The 2s, 3s, and 4s are like, hey! The 5, 6s, and 7s are like, and the gut's like, what are we doing? What's going on? Right? Against them. They process how? Their intuition, their gut. And how they present themselves? Grounded. Both feet on the ground. Stable. Their underlying emotion is guilt. I have done wrong. Remember, shame is I am wrong. I don't have to do anything. Fear is I am afraid. Proximity. Guilt is I have done wrong. It's in the past. It's performance-based. Guilt's a bottomless bucket. Like all these emotions, this emotional triumvirate. I'll be glad when my book on emotional triumvirate comes out. Should be out March of 2024, this month. Because it deals with these 3 emotions. And you realize that guilt's a bottomless bucket. And I'm an 8, so I got so much guilt, man. And a lot of it is legit. Done a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have done. Didn't do a lot of stuff I should have done. And that guilt, it can hit. And just like the other triads, how does the gut triad deal with guilt? By being powerful, peaceful, and principled. How does this work? If you're an 8 and you use your power to do good, you feel less guilty. You say, but I know. If you're 9 and you're able to broker peace, you don't feel so guilty. So you're always, it's one of the reasons why 9s are like, and sometimes you find 9s like, the 9 didn't stand up for me. Like, yeah, I know. They feel guilty and they tend to be people. I know. It is what it is. And then the 1s are principled. They deal with their guilt by being principled. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Good. Fundamental question they're asking, how am I doing? Not who am I or where am I? How am I doing? You want to know how they're doing? Because guilt says, you're not doing good. Right? Where am I? Fear says, you're not safe. Who am I? Shame says, you're nobody. You're not going to be anybody. Are you kidding me? All of us need a message, a mechanism, and a narrative to combat this. The Enneagram is simply here to make you aware of how you perceive, process, and present yourself. Part of that perception and processing and presenting is knowing what you're prone to in terms of perceptions, connections, safe place, against them, how you're prone to process, feelings, cognition, instinct, right? How you're prone to present, relationally, figured out, grounded. What's your underlying emotion, shame, fear, or guilt? How you're prone to deal with it in a dysfunctional way, and what questions you're asking. It's an invitation. It's all an invitation. It's an invitation to be more aware. It's an invitation to be more aware so I can do relationships better. It's an invitation to learn and to grow. And it's a powerful invitation that you have accepted because you jumped in this course. And I'm proud of you for investing in yourself. There's no greater investment you could have made than an investment to purchase a tool and to learn about a tool that's going to give you lifelong benefits, and that you can pass down in terms of the fruit it's going to bear and the personal development it's going to kind of catalyze in you, and the knowledge you're learning from all of this. Now, some of you are like, okay, I get all this, but I got a ton of questions. You know what to do. You can hit me up and let's talk. All right? Grace and peace.